Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third Asia CEO Online Forum, brought to you by Asia CEO in partnership with PLDT Enterprise. Before we begin, please bow down our heads and join us for the invocation. Father in heaven, we are grateful for this opportunity to come together. We thank you for the people who are joining us today. Please bless our speakers, speak to our hearts through their words. Be with the men and women who are responsible for organizing this event. We thank you for their servants' hearts. Our prayer today is that your will be done through this event. Take what we have prepared and multiply our efforts as only you can. Steer our intentions to align with your righteous will. Remind us of your faithful provision when our efforts fail us or fall short. Blanket us with your peace today, Father. Keep us physically safe and guard our hearts and minds from pride and selfishness. Keep love at the forefront of our minds today and the guiding light for all we set out to accomplish and celebrate. In Jesus' name, amen. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the Philippine National Anthem.
Well, good morning to everyone. Really glad to have one. I know we have some people who've been with us in the last events and a lot of new people as well. These have been probably the most interesting times that we've all experienced in our lives. And it's so, traumatic, but it seems like we're going back to normal. While we hear this, and starting tomorrow, we're going to do that, and many other countries are doing the same thing. But we're also hearing a lot of companies laying off large numbers of people and even shutting down their operations. So it's a mixed bag, and a lot of countries don't yet know what to do in businesses. So we're going to hopefully get some feedback and ideas for what we can do to move our businesses and enterprises ahead. So we have some fantastic speakers today. I'm not just saying that lightly. Let me go through a quick roll call. Our first speaker will be JOJO Gendrano. He's head of marketing for PLDT Smart Enterprise. Glad to have you, JOJO. Next, we'll have Bernie Villadiego, considered the nation's most prominent economist. Where's Bernie? There he's coming up any second now. He will give us insight. There's Bernie, looking good. And a lot of ideas about what sectors will move ahead, which ones will not. Next, we'll have Bruce Winton. He's the cluster general manager of Marriott Group. I believe they're the largest certainly the largest international group in investing in the hospitality industry in Philippines. So a lot of interesting things from Bruce. Next, we'll have CHRISTOPHE VICIC. He's the country head of JLL, the region's largest real estate advisory firm. CHRISTOPHE is coming. There he is. Big smile on his face. Looking nice. And then lastly, the highlight, we will have Secretary BERNADETTE PUYAT of the Department of Tourism. And we're really pleased to have her. I know she's in a lot of interviews and TV discussions, and this is probably the most tumultuous time of her career, I would say. There's Bernadette. Very nice to have you, Secretary. Okay, so we'll get going right now. So our first speaker is JOJO Gendrano. He is head of marketing for PLDT and Smart Enterprise. He previously spent a decade working on Wall Street for Goldman Sachs and other organizations, returned to Philippines in 2013 to take a prominent role with PLDT Group. So, JOJO, pleased to have you, and we'll look forward to some interesting insights on what the future looks like and how you kept all of our networks working together. I think it's one of the few things that kept on working through all of this. Thanks, JOJO.
Thank you very much, Richard, and a very pleasant good morning to all of our viewers. So on behalf of PLDT Enterprise, it is my pleasure to be joining you all for today's session as we discuss how life and work after COVID may look like, the new normal, or day zero as we would like to call it in PLDT and Smart. As we all should have realized by now, there is simply no going back after this, but that necessarily doesn't have to be a bad thing. Initially, we came into this mode of work thinking it would be a temporary situation. We were so focused on instigating a sense of normalcy that we didn't realize this period would actually be history in the making. But in fact, the longer we're able to thrive in this situation, we find that we're all the more resilient and agile. And that, to me, should be the guiding mindset. We have no choice but to survive, thrive, and evolve. Similar tectonic shifts have happened in our past and will continue to happen during our lifetimes and for the generations to follow. One thing that's interesting, though, or defining, is that with COVID, every possible walk of life was affected at the same time. An interesting analogy that I heard during a webinar by a prominent business school is a comparison with the previous global crisis, which was the global financial crisis of 2008. If each industry was represented by parts of the human body, the global financial crisis was like a devastating heart attack, which then required the heart to be strengthened, else it would continue to affect every part of the human body. COVID, on the other hand, is like taking a hard fall into a ditch when hiking, where all parts of the body are bruised and injured. Those parts of the body are like industries. All are affected, some parts more than most, but all have to cope and transform so that we can get out of this ditch or ravine. And we cannot guarantee that we will never fall again. We at PLDT and Smart are honored and driven to play a critical role in this transformation. We are front and center in the state of necessary connectedness and will work with you to help you through your journeys. We're also evolving with you at the same time, and allow me to share some examples as to how we at PLDT and Smart are making our transition. With ECQ and GCQ still in full effect across the country, connectivity and technology stand as our key lifeline and drivers of normalcy. As we have also been impacted by COVID, we needed to be extra creative, detailed, and resourceful in managing the way we maintain our networks and ensure that it runs at peak quality. We have seen at least a 20% increase in overall usage, but now with tropical depression, which is now a typhoon, Ambo is in town. It added another dimension in needing to be agile to mitigate risk from possible damage its rains and winds might bring. This has required us to be resourceful given the varying constraints imposed by unpredictable situations. While not perfect, it is necessary for our business and all of our customers to remain operational. We've also been surveying our employees, and it is fairly unanimous that most are working more hours than ever before. We try our best to keep a keen eye out for employee well-being, but we're proud to also say that productivity has also been at an all-time high. There have been so many attempts to go paperless, for example, in the past, and here comes COVID, and now we're paperless almost overnight. Meetings are more frequent, but shorter and more effective. Quarterly updates are now monthly. Monthlies are about weekly, and we have 15 to 30-minute daily stand-up meetings as well. And along with increasing everyone's digital quotient, I think everyone in the entire organization have become better public speakers and also faster typers in a short amount of time. Pretty much every facet of the organization has been disrupted by the pandemic. But again, while this isn't the most comfortable thing, being flexible enough to adapt to change is what has allowed us to deliver on our promise of providing the best possible customer experience. In particular, we at PLDT Enterprise are focused on making a positive impact on every single business. Previously, we used to hold about 600 events in a year with attendees ranging from anywhere to from 30 to 3,000. Today, we made the shift to an online-first mindset, really owning the webinar space. This flexibility has allowed us to interact better and reach more customers. From 3,000, we've been able to capture a viewership of 300,000 and growing. In the words of our Chairman and CEO, Mr. Manuel V. Pangilinan, technology is the ultimate equalizer of opportunity. And we see this truth manifested in our day-to-day activities and endeavors. While the current setup imposes many restrictions, it also provides us with the freedom to reinvent our organizations in novel ways. Similarly, this situation has allowed us to better collaborate internally as well as with our partners and customers. And that's the best thing about going into day zero. It allows for change that affects the majority. And while we're still in a period of transition, studying what best practices can and should be across industries, we're holding discussions with our clients to have an intimate understanding of what the market today needs. Let's face it, there's no longer a one-size-fits-all solution because the spirit is so volatile. But this only serves as an opportunity to be closer to our market and deliver services relevant to their needs and requirements. As you can see, yes, we're headed towards an all-new normal, but that's a good thing. Change is happening before our very eyes, and it's allowing us to reinvent ourselves for the better. In the words of the late General Electric CEO Jack Welch, change before you have to. And if I may add to this, I'd like to say, change before you have to. It's the only way to thrive, whether in work, play, or life. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Jojo. Yes, that's so interesting because everyone we spoke to, how many of them say that this work from anywhere, work from home thing really does work, and it's really going to change the future once things turn back to normal. So thank you very much, Jojo. We'll have some questions for you a little bit later, so we'll get on to our next speaker. And we're really pleased to have Dr. Bernie Villadiego. He's considered the nation's most prominent economist. He's been advisor to most of the country's presidents for the past 30 years. He also, if you ever studied or ever took an economics course somewhere, it was probably him that wrote your textbook. And he also goes around the world promoting Philippines as a premier business destination. So very pleased to have Dr. Bernie to give us an overall broad view of the economy and recovery. So please welcome Dr. Bernie Villadiego.
Good morning to all of you. I'm glad to be back with the PLDT forum. Let me start by saying that the moment there is more freedom of movement of people, goods, and services, and we don't know exactly when that will be, I'm hoping that by the second semester, we'll have a lot more freedom. There are going to be just two major engines of growth of the Philippine economy from the macro point of view. Let me remind you, what are the four engines of growth of any economy? The first is obviously the consumer sector, which represents 70% of our GDP. Second would be private investment. Third will be the government. And fourth will be the international sector, exports and imports. I'm sure it's quite clear that in this pandemic, private investment is going to take a backseat. A lot of companies have been hit hard. They will not be very eager to expand their investment. And secondly, next year, the coming year, we'll be seeing a depression as worse as that depression of the 1930s, so the global situation will be very bleak. However, the Philippines is fortunate because we have a young, growing, and Englishing population, which is the basis for the first engine of growth, the consumer sector. And fortunately, our government has been very disciplined fiscal-wise over the last 10 to 15 years. We've kept our debt to GDP ratio at very manageable level. So our government can really afford to borrow a lot to be able to prime the pump. And so these are the two engines of growth: consumption and government expenditure. Now, in the consumer sector, I see that there will be three areas which will grow more than average. Suppose this year we have 0 or 1% growth. These three sectors can grow anywhere from 4 to 6%. If next year we can bounce back at 6 to 7%, these three sectors can grow even double digit. What are they? It's really a no-brainer. The first is the food sector. Even in the worst period of the pandemic, food has been growing literally by leaps and bounds. And when I talk about food, I'm talking about the whole value chain of agribusiness, from farming to post-harvest to storage to logistics to processing to retailing. So all of these areas of food and agribusiness will definitely lead the recovery. Second, also a no-brainer, everyone is concerned about health. Therefore, that sector that we can describe as fitness, from pharmaceuticals to medical services to all types of ways of strengthening the immunity, health food, all of these specific consumer items will have a very large demand. And the third one is very obvious from even this webinar. I describe this sector as quote-unquote Facebook to represent all the digital devices and services that are growing exponentially. And this, as you have heard from everyone talking about the digital era, this will be very much part of the new normal, where from banking to education to retailing and so on and so forth, the digital technology will be a very important part. So that is the sector that is also, like food and fitness, going to grow double digit. And I forgot, there's a fourth sector. In fact, I should have thought of it first because I'm in that sector. It's education. I use an F word also, formation, to include not only degree-giving programs, which are formal education programs, non-formal ones, a lot of structured ways of imparting knowledge and skills, but are not leading to degrees, and the informal education, many, many ways of helping people to improve their knowledge and skills, which will definitely be in great demand after this pandemic. The ones that will definitely not be growing for some time, I see at least for the next 2 to 3 years, and I'm sure this will be discussed by our Secretary Puyat, is travel and tourism. Obviously, there will be certain segments there, if we are creative, that we can somehow make certain assets we have productive, like all the islands we have that will appeal to Filipinos in domestic tourism. I'm glad the word wanderlust was used, because Filipinos are among the people in the world with the highest wanderlust. And I'm sure the moment that we can travel from one island to another, you will have domestic tourism taking off. But in general, tourism will definitely not grow as it did in the past. Then food, fashion, furnishings, related also to real estate, will definitely slow down. So those are going to be the laggard economies. Entertainment, that I put together with tourism, to the extent that entertainment can be delivered through the digital mode, which Netflix and other ways of entertaining Filipinos from the lowest income households to the highest income households, I think entertainment can also bounce back rather fast. So these are the sectors, the leading sectors. I refer to them as the emerging industries, and the lagging sectors, I refer to them as the submerging industries. So this is how I see how the recovery will look like. And on the part of the government, obviously, the build will continue. You will have a lot, especially of infrastructure building in the countryside. And I think the government has all the necessary resources, I said, because the government is stable enough fiscally to be able to borrow a lot. And there is much that can be borrowed abroad because a lot of international funding agencies precisely have very few options. And the Philippines is always cited as one of the most promising emerging markets in the coming years. So I hope to answer questions later on. So these are my views about the post-pandemic economy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Bernie. Yes, that's interesting. I hope we don't have to wait the full 2 or 3 years for some of these sectors. But yeah, we'll have some questions later on, Bernie. I'm sure there'll be popular ones for you. Okay, our next speaker is Bruce Winton. His formal title is Cluster General Manager of Marriott International. Marriott has 5 major world-class hotels, very large facilities in Philippines, but have in construction and advanced planning stages for another 15. So this is a major focus for this global organization and important for the world's economy, because when investors first come to Philippines, they need to stay at a premier facility like a Marriott. So we'll look forward to hearing Bruce's story. He's also past president of the American Chamber of Commerce, and he even has a Filipino wife. So he's really drank the Kool-Aid for Philippines. So please welcome Bruce Winton of Marriott International. Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you, Richard, and good morning, everybody. So, well, following in the footsteps of Bernie, as with his economic outlook, it's true that hospitality, travel, and tourism is generally been at the bottom of most of the charts and graphs that we've been looking at for the last 3 months. So how are we dealing with that in our industry? I have to tell you that hoteliers, we're obviously social animals, and we're in a very social, high-touch, highly personal environment and workspace. And so it has been difficult for us. But, you know, we weather every storm. We're hardworking, we're resilient, and we're definitely creative. And it's by nature and by function that we are that way. So with those qualities, we shall engage with the challenge and the recovery ahead. So, you know, we've heard the word unprecedented, rock bottom, things like that just thrown around. Arne Sorensen reported Marriott International's first quarter earnings just recently, and we had a 90% drop in net income compared to 2019. So that really does, you know, put it into a global perspective. This is unprecedented and it is global, but we still remain optimistic. I was the one using the word wanderlust earlier. You cannot stop people. I think locally we can all agree that Filipinos will continue to go out to eat. They will continue to desire to get together, and we just have to be prepared to deal with that responsibly and quickly, and that's what we're doing. So to sum up our priorities, I'll start with number 1, which is to, first and foremost, we're focused on taking care of our people. We are in the people industry, we're not in the hotel industry. And looking after our people right now is our number 1 priority. So we're trying to protect jobs. We're trying to protect people's financial, emotional, and physical well-being, and instituting programs that support all of that. You know, it is difficult. Some of the SMEs are really struggling. Some of the bigger players have a little bit deeper pockets, and more resources to be able to support and manage through this difficult time. So first and foremost, we're focused on taking care of our people, protecting jobs, and keeping everybody working as much as we possibly can. To do that, focuses on our second priority, which is to kind of reopen the industry as safely and as quickly as possible. At the moment in the NCR particularly, we probably haven't hit the bottom yet because, through attending to the essential services, returning OFWs, the BPO sector, etc., there is still a little bit of traction out there. And we're actually doing better than many other markets, both domestically and regionally. So I think as we move into the general quarantine, that's where we may sort of bottom out, and that's what we're looking for, looking at. So how can we continue the operation of our hotels safely, securely as we move into the general quarantine phases? So we're doing that now. We're working hand in hand, public sector, private sector, coming together with new standards for cleanliness, safety, sanitation, and operations. That we can meet the expectations of our consumer, build confidence amongst them, and also service the needs that they still have and want. And people do still want to go out to eat. They do still want to go to rest, relax, and they do still have business needs to travel and to do business in across the economy. And we're there to service all those different sectors. We're retooling, we're retraining, we're rethinking everything that we do. I'm getting a quick time check here, so I'll keep moving. We are embracing, I wouldn't say we're expanding the use of technology, but we're definitely accelerating the use of technology from mobile, remote guest check-in, digital payments, mobile keys, using your cell phone to enter your room. People will try to lower the number of touch points, but still have the same hospitality experience. Where long-term contingency planning is big. We're talking about growing in the Philippines. We'll take these opportunities to restructure our organization and kind of right-sizing and adapting to the new normal. Of course, we are blessed with a robust domestic tourism market. So, rather than some markets that are really dependent on international tourists, despite the double-digit growth over the last 10 years, almost 85% of the tourism economy is domestically driven. So we're fairly optimistic about that. So the sooner we can start domestic travel and give people that sense of confidence in the safety and the nature of our business moving forward, I think we'll see the traction start to take place. So yeah, there's a lot there. I'm sure there'll be some more comes up in the Q&A. But at the moment, we're just preparing our facilities to restart and open to the general public. And, you can expect the highest levels of attention to detail on safety, sanitation, and personalization, with perhaps a few less touch points along the way. So look forward to taking questions later, and thanks for the opportunity. But again, the message is we will be back because we know that the public will be looking for us to service their needs in the future. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's fantastic, Bruce, because we've heard of so many not positive stories, closures and places, but you guys are moving ahead and committed. That's impressive. Okay, well, you have to hear more. Okay, our next speaker is Christophe Vicic. He's the country head of JLL. Christophe's considered one of the nation's key real estate leaders. He oversees the Philippine operations for JLL, the largest real estate advisory firm in Asia. He's also president of the French Chamber of Commerce in Philippines, a key business group. So please welcome Christophe Vicic. Glad to have you, Chris.
Good morning, Richard, and thank you. Good morning, everybody. Again, real pleasure to be speaking at the Asia CEO Online Forum. Yes, I will be touching on the real estate as a whole. It's more a general update, but as you all know, the real estate industry has been impacted by the pandemic. Worldwide, it's a global impact. in the Philippines. First quarter was a kind of a mixed bag, as we only had 2 weeks of lockdown in latter part of March. We could say that quarter one was reasonably good for the real estate sector. The rest of the year, obviously, will be a different story. But what I want to talk today, it's about the real estate shift and also some re-emerging trends or emerging trends. And first of all, we have identified 4 major shifts in the physical and online real estate landscape. The first one, I think we all talked about it, is the acceleration of technology adoption. Either by necessity or by design, we all have had to embrace technology for those who could continue working, and work from home was, I would say, in the Philippines, and thanks to the PLDT of this world, and also to all the technology support that is available, was a success. But we see a longer term and a longer shift. One is PropTech. Property technology will affect the real estate. There will be a cultural change. There will be a greater acceptance of technology. The second shift, rise of the digital economy, already mentioned by some speakers before me. E-commerce is a winner during this lockdown period, but also all the technology companies, the one providing online finance, online payment, online security system. We all read how the hackers are getting also working from home and disrupting all our services. Rise of the digital economy. The number 3, which is a really obvious one, but it's good to refocus, greater emphasis on health and wellness by all stakeholders. And this is really critical. It's a government, landlord, property owners, occupiers, and talent, employees. We all will want, and Bruce mentioned it, to feel safe in where we work, where we stay, where we play, where we live, what we consume. And this is going to be a huge uptake. The last one on the shift, cities. The future of cities will be revisited. A lot of discussion on redesigning them, redesigning building, office, retail space, food and beverage. Obviously, the workplace will be impacted. Living, leisure, and travel, for sure. And the last one is the communal area. We will have to rethink until a permanent solution is found to the pandemic, which would be a vaccine. How do we use communal area? This was on a 4 major shift. We also identified some future bright spot. We have to say this is not doom and gloom. There is a big economy next to us, China, which has reopened before us, hopefully should stay open, and this is a driver. In whatever capacity you assess China, it's still a global driver for any economy recovery. We also seen in a real estate sector in China what we call the green shoots. These are office sector, some retail, residential that are regaining traction. We believe that in the Philippines, one of the future bright spots will be the IT BPM, the BPO, the outsourcing, and the POGOs if they are allowed to remain in business. The office sector in general should be the first recovery driver for the real estate. We also see the residential sector to underpin this demand and recovery, and most likely it will have to be reshaped in a more online type of residential buying or letting, but also online facility payment. Philippine Real Estate Investment Trust, REIT. We believe REIT will benefit from a conclusion trend that I will mention, which is we have seen a clear assessment that the real estate sector, brick and mortars, does generate some better return for investors, and money will be readily available in the real estate. Government policies we expect some recovery package, tax rebate. Really, the government will be a huge driving force in a recovery. And the last one, obviously already mentioned, build, build, build. This program will never stop, cannot stop, and we think that this will contribute to the recovery from the real estate point of view. And I would like to conclude my small speech by taking you through 5 global emerging real estate trends, because they are global, but they are coming to the Philippines. Some have already emerged, some are kind of accelerating. The first one, which really has an importance for the Philippines, is the growth in corporate outsourcing, because this has a direct impact on the IT BPM. There will be an increased demand for new workplace design, including more digital, flexible, and health-oriented working solution. And a lot of companies will be looking at outsourcing some of their in-house services. This is a positive. There will be, and I already touched on it, a flight to safety in real estate. Real estate continue to offer better relative returns in comparison to other asset classes, and this will continue to grow. Urbanization, the pandemic will not stop long-term urbanization. Cities are growing, cities are receiving more and more talent workers. However, we think the pandemic will prompt a rethink in urban design, increasing the imperative to develop truly scalable smart city solution. And this is more than having a paper design. This will be concrete rethinking of smart cities. Technology, remote working technology will stay long over the pandemic resolution. It is most likely a strong factor to increase the pace of post-industrial revolution. We all, at different level of surprise, discover that work from home is a viable solution to a certain level. And the last one, sustainability. A strong proponent, JLL, is doing a lot of work to ensure that we do construct sustainable building, that we do sustainable fit out, but also the sustainability is shifting to the well-being. Sustainability was more about concrete, brick and mortars, was more about preserving the planet, energy saving. Sustainability is moving towards well-being, which is about people. And this is, for me, maybe one of the most global and local emerging real estate trends. People will become the center of whatever we do in sustainability redevelopment. That's it from me. I'm looking for responding to any question further down the event. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you very much, Christophe. Yes, the remote working, COVID has shown everybody that remote working really does work, and it's going to open up a lot of jobs, like you said, for the next wave of business process outsourcing, especially into the provinces. So it's very exciting from that perspective. Okay, but our next speaker, so thank you very much, Christophe. Our next speaker, we are so pleased to have her, Secretary Bernadette Puyat of Department of Tourism. She's a key leader in the Duterte administration and certainly one of its most popular people, it seems, from what I read and so forth. We had her speak before at an event, perhaps maybe a year or so ago. She spoke for us, and she was just an absolute delight. We had to stop the event after she finished her presentation because everybody wanted to speak to her on stage. So we're really pleased to have her today. Please welcome Bernadette. Describes probably the most challenging time in her life. And so please welcome Bernadette Puyat, Secretary, Department of Tourism. Welcome, Bernadette.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Department of Tourism, let me extend my gratitude to the Asia CEO Forum for the opportunity to speak here today. For this online forum, we have been presented with a is normal, realistic, dwelling on the tourism industry's prospects in a post-COVID-19 and the steps we are taking to ease into what everyone is now calling the new normal. In January 2020, Philippine tourism was off to a good start with the growth in visitor arrivals and growth in visitor receipts. This was after a record-breaking year in 2019, which saw tourism arrivals reach new highs, reaching the 8 million visitor marks for the first time. This scenario of furthering tourism's bright and rosy prospects quickly changed with developments brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. For a country that derived 12.7% of its gross domestic product from tourism, to say that we were hit hard is an understatement. We were battered by the pandemic, and COVID-19 left us all bleeding. But as I like to say, it's not always about the numbers. During the outbreak, the DOT shifted from its primary mandate, which is the development and promotion of the tourism industry on both the domestic and international fronts, into another role, one which sought to keep all tourists safe, secure, and protected. Before I even address the possibility of our industry being able to return to normal, I cannot stress enough that the safety and well-being of our travelers and stakeholders must always come first. Among the unavoidable consequences of the community quarantine was the cancellation of domestic commercial flights. In response to the situation, the Department of Tourism, in cooperation with various embassies, consular offices, and other government departments and LGUs, arranged sweeper flights and was able to extend assistance to more than 25,000 foreign and domestic tourists. In the midst of the crisis, we continue to look for ways on how to address the needs of our visitors without losing the grasp of the fact that the very foundation of the industry is not just the tourists, but our own people, the tourism frontliners. During this period, where social distancing and other quarantine protocols became the norm, we reached out to our workforce online to train and retool them for what lies ahead with an enhanced learning opportunity. Online training isn't new to our industry, but never before has it experienced this much demand and widespread acceptance. Recognizing this, the DOT will continue to host webinars for our industry workforce, stakeholders, and entrepreneurs, making sure that they are up to date with the latest information, not only on how to respond to the threat of COVID-19, but also on the paths toward recovery and moving forward. To support our small and medium business players, the DOT ordered the waiver of accreditation fees for tourism-related establishments as a way of easing the financial burden at this time of crisis. We are likewise working closely with other relevant government agencies on the possible relaxation or deferment of taxes and other fees. These, partnered with other fiscal and non-fiscal assistance, would form part of the relief and incentive packages that are being formulated. The Department of Tourism is also completing its tourism response and recovery plan. The TRRP has consolidated the inputs from all concerned industry subsectors to make for an inclusive planning process and an integrated implementation with the support not only of the government, but of the private sector as well. The TRRP is envisioned to include programs, projects, and activities under 6 thematic outcomes with emphasis on sustaining businesses, training or capacitating the workforce, and protecting vulnerable groups. These thematic outcomes are: first, appropriate infrastructure; number 2, secured livelihood and adequate social services; 3, sustained business operations; 4, enhanced marketing, market and product development; 5, timely and efficient institutional support; and 6, effective strategic communication. As we heal as a community, nature heals with us. As our beaches and forests are rested, we see a renewed sense of beauty and hope in them. Let us come out of this situation as better stewards of the earth, and let us start by becoming more responsible travelers and managers that practice accountability. Recent events have caused a major shift in the landscape of the travel industry. Before, food and culture and immersions were the primary influences behind a traveler's choice of the destination. Today, safety will be the paramount concern of most, if not all, of our visitors. With travel restrictions all over the world in place, virtual trends or virtual tours have become a trend. Last month, the Intramuros administration launched virtual tours inside the walled city's museums, churches, and its popular spots on social media. Likewise, the DOT and the Tourism Promotions Board have also shared breathtaking photos of our religious sites all over the country during the Holy Week and 360-degree virtual tours of our country's best diving destination. The DOT stands behind the United Nations World Tourism Organization's message that by staying home today, we can travel tomorrow. Amplifying that message for would-be travelers, we launched a global campaign called Wake Up in the Philippines. As foreign travelers await the lifting of international travel restrictions, the DOT campaign gently persuades them to consider the Philippines in their future travels. And when that long-awaited day comes and global travel is once more determined to be safe, we will be ready to welcome tourists with open arms and our signature Filipino brand of service once again. That being said, we also recognize that our industry does not operate in a vacuum. As demonstrated by this pandemic, our path is shaped in part by what happens on the global stage. There is no better time than now for the world's tourism industry to unite, learn from each other, and share each other's best practices. As a proud member of the ASEAN, we recently reiterated our commitment to support ASEAN tourism's road to recovery, banking on the unity of the tourism industry to ensure that we will endure and overcome these trying times together. For the time being, before people regain their confidence in the safety of global travel, the DOT is looking inward to give emphasis to domestic and intra-ASEAN markets. By tapping into our domestic and short-haul market, we can overcome some of the considerable challenges we face following this pandemic. We will be counting on our domestic travelers, and as they will play an important part in the travel industry's recovery. The way I see it, asking whether things can go back to normal isn't the right question. As someone who always looks forward, I'd rather ask, how do we make things even better than they were? The world's post-lockdown will forever be changed. Let's choose to embrace the challenge it brings and come out stronger than before. Thank you and mabuhay.
Okay, thank you very much, Secretary Puyat. That was very optimistic and so lovely to see that you do have a positive view for the future. But I'm sure it's been a difficult time. I know it's very. So people, if you can send some messages of support to Secretary Puyat and her people, we'll collect them and send her. Hopefully we can make them feel as good as we can. And I understand Secretary can't stay for the question period, but her colleague will be with us. So we wish her well. I know at her last event, everybody wanted her to run for president, and I don't know if I should say that, but no, okay, she says no. But we're really glad to have you. Thank you very much, Bernadette, and please keep up the great work everyone is doing in your group. So we'll have next our question and answer period. So please stay with us. This will get exciting. And first, watch this, and we'll get going.
Key in your questions, comments, and suggestions via the chat.
Okay, very good. Glad to have everyone here, and I'll welcome the new member of our group, Undersecretary Bong Bengzon, on the bottom left corner, looking good with his headphones on, a nice smile there. And so he's with a key guy within the Department of Tourism, so he'll talk about any questions to do with that. But first of all, if I could just start off with a general question for everyone. It's been a tumultuous time for many of us, just staying in our home, can't exercise. But what have we learned about working from home? What have we learned through this crisis? Anybody want to start? Who'd like to go first?
Start? You want?
Sure.
Yes. Well, I'm sure many of you will agree that using all the digital devices and applications, we have been a lot more productive working at home than having to go to the office, enduring horrible traffic, wasting a lot of time. I think we've made use of our time definitely more effectively during this lockdown. Those of us, of course, who have professions which involve meeting with others, and especially as an educator, giving classes online, even mentoring one-on-one. So working at home has been terrific. And that's why I think the new normal for educators, even if we can go back to the classroom, in the new normal, we will still retain part of our education through online means. And so I think that will definitely be permanent. We will combine classroom with online instruction. So we will call that blended learning. And I think the same thing with board meetings. We've discovered that our attendance at board meetings has even been better because, well, most of the people were at home. They had no conflict of schedule. And so I'm sure in the future, a lot of board meetings will be held online. So this is one of the things I learned during this lockdown.
Yes, I think everyone's talking about that, about how productive we are, and I think it's a surprise to anybody. Anybody else?
If I may, so just very quickly so while working from home is an interesting balancing act, just to me personally, it further reinforced that it is so empowering to be working in the telecommunications industry, as to what we're working on is helping make an impact. And, we're proud that, we're playing a part in making segments and industries to be more capable and resilient moving forward.
Yes, very much. Bruce, I know you're busy. What do you think about all this?
Well, we work in an emotionally caring, creative industry, and that, as I said earlier, has suffered. There's no doubt about it. So one of the things we've learned is not to take anything for granted. We've enjoyed double-digit growth in tourism. We've enjoyed robust growth in our sector over the last decade, and quite frankly, the legs were kicked out from under us. So it's a learning. It's a little sobering, but with the adaptation, the rethinking, the retooling, the retraining, and all of the things that we're currently engaged in, it really is a strong lesson for all of us and a beneficial one. But I think on a positive side, that is all positive. It has to be, because it's training us to deal with the future. But aren't we all looking forward to that little something that we've missed for the last 90 days? It's just going to make it so much more impactful. So whether it's your favorite restaurant, your favorite food, your favorite personality that you've missed from the hotel or the leisure industry, it will come back. And how much better will it be, and how much more will you appreciate it? Whether it's that gathering with the family, as I say, or just that favorite food that you've missed. So let's not lose sight of that. We all want to be pragmatic and safe and all the rest of it, but there is an emotion. We're emotional beings, and that will drive the future success of our business.
Very good. Christophe, what about you?
Well, I think there is a story of two halves. Yes, if you have the technology, and also if you have the culture of the company. I think we are a bit missing the fact that we're all talking about working from home, and we're all thinking hardware, computer, laptop, mobile device, PDAs. Great, this is a must. But I think if your company culture is not attuned to remote working, this is another hurdle and I have to say, some of the companies in the last 60, 70 days have managed very well to move at an extremely fast speed, and this is by necessity. For me, I think that the learning, which has not yet been fully quantified, is the social impact. I mean, Bruce talked about it. The socializing by being at home has suffered. I think we all realize that, and we are social animals. We are people wants to be with other people, and I think this will have some effect. The quicker that the return to the next normal happen will help, but we should not underestimate the slightly negative impact of working from home. The third point is, for sure, we should continue to have a blend or a hybrid model where if people enjoy working from home or want to have more days at home rather than days in the office, this is something also to consider. It's going to be a blend of renewed productivity, efficacy, impactfulness by remaining with work from home and blending it with return to office.
Yes, very good. Certainly the people who travel 2 hours to work and 2 hours to home, I think a blended approach would be very appreciated. Undersecretary Bong Benzon, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you learned with your department?
Well, thank you, Richard. Clearly, technology has played a very important role in the way we conduct business. We're able to reach out to our partners. But you still have to bear in mind that tourism is a relationship-based industry that puts a lot of premium on face-to-face contact, handshake, the smile. And somehow the digital platform has provided us with an intermediate way of reaching out to our partners. I agree with everybody else that we've been able to work more efficiently. We're putting in more hours. I'm one of those that do 2 hours commute one way, total of 4 hours. So you can just imagine the reduction in travel time. But I think moving forward, it's important that we continue to reach out to our partners. Like I said, tourism has many critical touch points. And eventually, when the green light is open, we're just all too excited to be working with our partners again face-to-face.
Very good. Okay. Undersecretary Bong, very nice to have you a part of the group. Maybe if I could ask a couple specific questions, one to JoJo. But I know, I mean, it's interesting how the work from home, disrupting the way we work and so forth, but the different technologies that can enable this. What can you tell us about that? Are the technologies really there, or we still have a ways to go?
Sure. So what I'd say is there's a multitude of technologies that we can already take advantage of today, and a couple that I'm very keen on following and getting out there is, say, first one is on cybersecurity. So it's very possible to extend the technology controls and policies at the office and extend it all the way to the home. So the cloud also makes these technologies more scalable and easier to manage. Say an example, one of our partners, NetFoundry, has a super easy to deploy software client that optimizes and secures the communication from home to a business application in the cloud. And this is one of many applications in our arsenal that enable enterprises to let employees even handle even the most complex of workloads while working at home. Second one of interest is on e-learning platforms. So school and learning management systems are of absolute importance, and the availability and use of it may be a determining factor in our global competitiveness even. So there's also, and on top of that, there's also corporate learning platforms. Excited about the idea of things like augmented and virtual reality, going and transcending from being something that's cool to something that will enable effective training of employees in a multitude of sectors. The third one is more of a general concept around IoT, big data, and machine learning. So, say before I go for a grocery run in the future, I'd like to know which grocery has the shortest lines or the least amount of people, and maybe even queue prior to going to that particular grocery or particular establishment. So, and one of the many technologies of what these technologies can do.
Okay, very good. Well, Dr. Bernie Villadiego, if I could ask you, because there's quite a few questions directed to you. One is, how are people going to consume more, return to consumption growth, when many people have lost their jobs or they've used up all their savings? That's one question. Another one is, you are strong in agriculture and so forth, and it is such an important sector. What can we or government do to better help the agriculture sector, food processing, and logistics? Do you have any comments on that? I know it's a lot of material.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I'm a contrarian in the area of overseas workers. I don't think there will be a big drop, as some alarmists are saying. Our overseas workers, I've followed this sector for the last 20 years. In all of the crises, Great Depression, Arab Spring, when oil prices dropped to $30 at one time already, the overseas workers constantly increased their remittances by 3 to 5%. So I'm not saying they will have 3 to 5% increase, but I don't think there will be that big drop that some people are saying. I think overseas workers from the Philippines have a high premium compared to other nationalities. They will continue to be health workers. Just think of all the British compliments to British nurses. They will be in caregiving, etc. So that will be one of the sources of the consumer power. The remittances that relatives of these workers will continue to receive. Second, the BPO IT, as has been mentioned, will definitely continue to be a source of earnings for knowledge workers. I'm sure they will continue to have at least $20 billion of earnings, and convert that into what I expect to be the exchange rate closer to 53 than to 51 by the end of this year. That is also a source of purchasing power. Then, as I mentioned, the government will be active in pump priming, not only in actually giving cash subsidies to 18 million households. They will spend a lot in build, employing a lot of construction workers. So those are the sources of purchasing power that I see. Then,
okay,
yes,
sorry.
As far as agriculture is concerned, definitely we have to insist that most of the infrastructure spending should not be in the urban areas, but should be in farm-to-market roads, irrigation systems, post-harvest facilities, making our small farmers more productive. I've been saying that for years, and I'm glad that this pandemic has awakened many of our leaders of the importance of food security. And I think one of the benefits of this crisis is that we will never neglect the countryside again. And that's why I'm very bullish about agriculture.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, and maybe for Bruce and Undersecretary Bengzon, there's a lot of questions about the hospitality industry and concern and so forth. But it's so nice to hear Marriott Group is being a bit of a contrarian by planning to reopen their facilities and so forth. But now, Bruce, it's a delicate time and a lot of emotion and so forth about these things. But what would be the stages that you would take to reopen?
Well, I for the record, we are actually 100% open at this time.
Okay.
And as I said, the National Capital Region and down in Iloilo, we've benefited from being able to provide services to the BPO sector and to some of the essential services. Now, as that weans off, as the BPO sector goes back to work to a certain degree, that we see that going away. So we do feel that the choppiest waters still lie ahead of us, to be honest, and we do have to navigate through that over the next 90 days. So I think what we're focused on now is basically getting reopened to the general public as safely and as quickly as possible. So as we look at the various steps in the reopening of businesses, leisure and tourism is towards the bottom of that list, or the end of the long road in many ways. So I think we have to really establish what services our industry provides. It's not all about fun and games, and we do provide essential services to business, to corporate, and so on and so forth. So we want to be prudent and safe, but we are operating now, and we're doing it in a very safe way with modified operating procedures, new operating procedures, new sanitation procedures, and these things will continue. So what we're looking for is to continue to be able to operate in a safe way with obviously modified services and modified operating procedures, and be able to continue to do that. But perhaps in a slightly broader way than we're seeing on paper at the moment, which is extremely restricted to certain industries. So again, I would lobby, on our behalf, to say that if we can service one industry safely, we can service another industry safely. So let's take a look at that. There are millions and millions of jobs on the line in our industry, not to mention the indirect employment that goes along with everybody who services the hospitality industry. So this is huge impact. This is 12.5% of the GDP, more than 5 million direct employees in the country that are affected. So as we make decisions, let's be prudent, but let's take all of these into consideration holistically, and say that this is a big decision for the country on how we activate hospitality in the short term.
Absolutely. And it's also very important, like you said, for the economy from an investment side, because international investors, when you're new to a country, you want to stay at a world-class name that like a Marriott. And so it's really important. And if there isn't facilities open, they're not going to come. Undersecretary Bengzon, I know Secretary Puyat gave us a fantastic broad overview. Do you want to give a bit more specifics on that and what you might do to bring back the industry? What's your insights, sir?
Well, as we've mentioned many times over, we strongly feel that domestic travel will really help the industry get back on its feet. 2 years ago, there were about 110 million domestic trips taken by Filipinos, contributing about 3.2 trillion pesos. And even during the difficult times that we had with inbound travel because of the numerous advisories, in many cases, it's the domestic travel that has really kept many enterprises afloat. The return to domestic travel will be gradual, but it will be steady. What's important here is that destinations are able to provide the safety, and health protocols that the new wave of travelers will be looking for. And from a product development standpoint, it's also important for host communities to know what kinds of experiences the new travelers will be looking for. And we feel that many of them will opt for land travel in the meantime. They will opt for outdoor experiences, low density but high value kind of tour package. So these are some of the things that have to be taken into account when we do market development and product development.
Yes. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Well, we wish you well. And Christophe, now another key sector has been your sector, the real estate development sector. And there's so many cranes still, in the middle of construction projects, and so many more that are in the early stages. I mean, you talk with a lot of the real estate developers. It's a major employer and major opportunity for the nation. But what are you hearing? Are they in a trauma coma stage, or are they going to get back to work, do you think?
Well, they're definitely going to go back to work. I mean, as you notice, the construction industry is the first on the list on the modified ECQ. Obviously, a lot of constraint, like all of us. The feedback we have is whatever project is or has been launched, and when we say launch, I would say more than the foundation, they will continue. Office sector especially, we all agree at different level that this will be the main driver of recovery. In the area where project may have been about to launch or on still early stage, some of them may be put on hold, some of them may disappear. But I think the main thrust will be to finish and complete what has been started for the office sector. Residential, we heard different stories. Residential, some of the projects that were definitely on the paper, most of them have been put on hold until next year for review. And same story, whatever has started or has been launched will be completed. What we see also is the shift to industrial logistics supply chain with the online boom, the e-commerce, the technology, the need for more space in modern warehouse is becoming even greater than 3 months ago. And a lot of developers are talking to us to see what's the investment model to enter into this new asset class, which will become one of the pillars of the recovery, because we all agree we will continue working from home, we will continue ordering online, even if our favorite restaurants are reopened. The volume of demand will still have a huge satisfaction through the e-commerce online channel of delivery. This is what I can say. I mean, it's not cast in stone. There's lots of discussion. And I think the message we all want to send is let's reopen intelligently, safely, and start recovering. It will be a long road, and some sector will take longer because they are more acutely touched. But I think overall, the fact that we are back to a certain sense of next normal, I think this will kind of clarify some of these talk which are at very early stage in the real estate industry.
Okay, that's interesting. And maybe that takes me to the last question of the day. So what do you think will be the lasting impact of this crisis on our economy or even our personal lives? Christophe talked about online e-commerce and warehouse space and so forth. What do you think about the long-term impact of this? You think it's going to go away, or do you think it's going to has had something profound in our lives? What about Bernie? Do you like to go first? What do you think?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because I think that we should use this crisis to refocus on people. It was mentioned by Secretary Puyat and by Christophe that we should not be so concerned about GDP growth rate. I don't care if it's 2-6%. We have to think of what will be happening to those 18 million households that the government has been very concerned about in giving them subsidies of 5,000 to 8,000 pesos a month. I think that should be our main concern from now on. I think too much obsession with GDP, 6-8%. What we have to be concerned with is what happens to the lower segments of our population. And one of the things that I would definitely have everyone contribute some insights to is how do we implement this Balik Provincia movement. And I'm glad that Bruce mentioned Iloilo. There are areas right now that are more attractive than Manila in terms even of growth in the past. Davao, Iloilo, Bicol, many areas. If you take a look at the so-called gross regional product, Manila has been a laggard over the last 10 years. And that is why when we talk about Balik Provincia, we should look at those statistics and instead of just saying Balik Provincia in general, bring back people to Iloilo, to Davao, to Dumaguete, to General Santos, and think of what can be done in those more promising regions of the Philippines. And I, in fact, sometimes would like to see Manila's infrastructure deteriorate faster so we can somehow come to our senses and we move out of this hell and go into these other very attractive regions. So that's my take right now.
Okay, that's good comments. But you're right, Iloilo and some of these locations. Anybody, I know we have viewers from around the world, across Asia and North America, Europe. So if you ever come to Philippines, you don't have to just go to Manila. Go to these other locations because you will be very impressed and very happy to be there. What about you, Bruce? I know it's you're in a very high-touch industry, but what do you think about you and your sector?
Well, I think, it's for all of us, it's really important to, to take stock of what we've learned from this experience. There's a lot of things we can put to work, and it could be personally or it could be professionally. So I think we're all, we should all, and probably will all, take a little bit more care of ourselves. The health is wealth. At the end of the day, that things have been pretty bleak for many in recent weeks, and I think we've all really established what's most important in life, and that's our health and our family. So let's I think that's the priority. Look after yourself, look after each other, and then let's see. I mean, I think we touched on the the working remotely. That's never been done in the hotel business generally, apart from maybe less than 1% of our businesses work remotely. But we've definitely opened up an opportunity that could be higher than that, and get a few more cars off of EDSA. Just having people stay at home and be just as effective. It won't transcend all of our industry, of course. But again, I still go back to that you cannot take the socialization out of humankind. And we have to believe in that. A week after 9/11, there wasn't a plane in the sky. This is more global. This is bigger, and it will take more than 2 weeks to 2 months to get back. But it will come back. There's no stopping us. There's no stopping us. I mean, we live in a global economy. The world's become a smaller place. We will be more conscious. I hope we all wash our hands more often. I hope we all take care of ourselves and have good health. But let's keep on traveling. It's essential.
It is, yes. And Filipinos, you can't keep them away from socialization and high touch.
That's right.
They're the most wonderful at it. JOJO Gendrano, what are your thoughts on lasting impact?
I think as within the telecommunications industry is we will just continue to strive to make our network better, and we're trying our best to keep up with the demand. And kudos to our technology teams who have a much keener eye on capacity and performance, as we need to meet demand, but at the same time sustain, if not improve, the user experience and performance. So we had to adjust a lot of things as the demand transitions more to the residential areas. We've had to reuse frequencies. We've allocated for 5G and use it temporarily for 4G and LTE for now, just so that we have adequate capacity. So it's that level of detail and planning is going on into our network to ensure that we keep that we can continue to meet demand. And at the end of it all, I think after all of this, the best part is we will all come out a lot more effective and resilient. It will take some time, but I surely believe that will be the case.
I think so too. You've got a big opportunity, particularly from the BPO sector. I know you are delivering thousands and thousands of devices so that people could work from their homes. But I think the next phase is, especially mothers, it'll really open up employment opportunities for them in the provinces.
Correct.
To be able to, so it's a big opportunity. We got to keep focused on that. Christophe, what do you see as some of the lasting impacts?
In general, and especially in real estate, I think we move, or we accelerating from being business centric, company centric, to people centric. And I strongly believe personally, and some of the emerging trend, that we will do things from a more individualistic, personal point of view. The cities are going to be built around the people living in these cities. The government decision will be made around improving the life of its citizen. The urbanization will not only be driven by people moving to urban cities to work, but also to have a certain quality of life. And the whole technology, online sustainability piece will become higher on the agenda of the investment community and the country investment. This is what I would say is a lasting impact.
Okay, very good. And lastly, Undersecretary Bengzon, what can you tell us?
Well, I think we all agree that there's been a lot of reflection, a lot of refocusing among us over the last 2 months. And this pandemic has really made, or has resulted in major adjustments in almost all facets of life. But I think what's important here is that moving forward, to echo what you mentioned just a while back, maybe we can set aside first the fixation with numerical indicators and put the welfare of people at the center of it all. What we want is when we emerge from this pandemic, we want to be stronger, we want to be better people, and we want to make sure that we're able to provide the help that we are supposed to provide. In the case of tourism, we want to bring tourism livelihood back. We want to help people. We want to help local communities. So that will be the focus of our efforts in the months and the years to come.
Yes. Okay. Very good. Well, keep up the good work, and please out there, if you can make some messages and comments of support and appreciation for our friends at the Department of Tourism. I'm sure this has been the most difficult time of their entire lives. Even Bruce, I think he could use a bit of picking up. He's usually a bit more peppier, I think. He's pretty good. But so thank you, everyone. I know we had, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of people from around the world. I don't know how they find out about all these things, but I'm so glad to have them with us. And we'll look forward to the next one in a few weeks. So Bernie, fantastic to see you, even though it is online here. Bruce, doing well. JoJo, very good. Christophe, and Undersecretary Bengzon. Really glad to have everyone with us. And also, please thank you to Secretary Puyat as well. So we had a fantastic event, and we'll look forward to seeing you all soon, certainly in person. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
See you.
Thank you.
Okay, and so next we will have a closing message a closing message from the CEO of Asia CEO Forum, Rebecca Bustamante. So just 1 second, here she is.
Today's Asia CEO Forum theme is It's Realistic Normal, and thank you to all our speakers for sharing their ideas. As Dr. Bernie Villadiego said, food, agriculture, logistics, healthcare, e-commerce, education will continue to grow. So thank you for that. We also have JOJO Gendrano, VP of PLDT, and he said new normal is a state of agility. We simply have to adapt to keep evolving. While Bruce Winton is so exciting, the GM of Marriott said, Marriott will be back. That is very exciting. While CHRISTOPHE VICIC, the country head of JLL, said, BPO will continue to grow in the Philippines. So we don't have any problem with that. While Secretary of Tourism BERNADETTE PUYAT said, Philippines will be even better than normal. So that is very exciting. While Yusek Bong Binson said, tourism will bounce back despite of the pandemic. And again, we have so many viewers and questions from around the world, from Canada, US, New Zealand, Australia, Malaysia, and around the world. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for joining, and looking forward to see you on the next event. Filipinos, let's continue to work together. We have to become more stronger and united to hit Philippines a first world country. Salamat at mabuhay. Stay safe.